number 4, and I'm extremely pleased that in order to kind of spur communication and cross-pollinate ideas with people, BMC's made an earnest commitment to share what's happening in our building safety world with all of our members and all of our attendees at this. And it's going to pay dividends, I hope, in the long run, but it's certainly going to introduce us to one another in ways that we didn't expect before. We're extremely excited this time to have David Jackson with us. And David's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the things that he does, what his goals are. I hope what it means to him to be a code official and some of the challenges he's faced becoming a code professional in his own community. But before David gets on there, just by way of thanks, I'd like Rick Hoffey to do the introduction and give us a little bit of a prologue for this, because Rick, we do really appreciate you bringing David into our world here and letting us know what he's out there and what he's doing. And our way of saying thanks to you is to give you the microphone now. Rick?
Well, I hope you don't regret that there, Dan. I just am so honored to be able to address the Building Membership Council and to introduce your guest. He is a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. He's an enrolled member of the Gila River Indian Community. He's in his earlier mid-30s, and he, when he returned from active service, he came back home and enrolled in the very unique apprenticeship program that the community has nurtured over the years. A tremendous stepping stone for careers, but I think David Jackson is a star on his own right, and I think is somebody to watch in ICC, future in this future. But I'm going to let him explain himself, and just also want to say that he's been very instrumental in the work that I've been doing up here in the Dakotas, in my part of the woods, in trying to get Native tribal councils to adopt international codes. And it's really difficult in this part of the country because these are among the poorest counties in the United States. And but they want to succeed, and they really want to try. And there's a lot of good people that are involved here. And David has been a real boost for them. And he's, I think his biggest contribution, and I know he'll be speaking that today, is about the empowerment that tribal governments have when they adopt and enforce the codes. They're able to shape the kinds of communities and economies that are best for them. So let me present David Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffey. As he said, my name is David Jackson. I'm an enrolled member of the Gila River Indian Community. I am a Marine Corps veteran, and I've been in code enforcement for approximately 9 years. What I have found to be unique and what I have found to be a driving force in what I see as the future of code is how is code enforced in Native American communities? What Native American communities have code adoptions? What Native American communities have building safety departments? What Native American communities have community members of their own individual tribe staffing and enforcing those codes? And the reason why that interests me is because we are a sovereign nation as federally recognized tribes. And in the US, there are over 500 federally recognized tribes. Sovereign nations in their own right with their own government, responsible for providing services to their people. What I feel is something that needs to be addressed or can be given to these communities is the code adoption. The history of Native American communities is that of it's that of struggle. We're given very little and told to suffice with as much. That goes for our buildings. As a tribal sovereign nation, there tends to be quite a big issue with economic development. How do we build infrastructure? How do we build buildings? How do we maintain pride in the facilities that we have with very little to no income. So when I started asking these questions, there weren't a lot of answers. But through the outreach, which I believe has begun with other individuals and starting to network everyone, is that there's a want and a need for what we're striving to create. The very first Native American Code Officials chapter recognized by the ICC. Why is that important? That is important because it gives a face to lend aid to those growing communities. And that's what I'm passionate about. Empowerment. I recently had a conversation with the Laguna tribe. The Laguna tribe of New Mexico is between a rock and a hard place with adopting a code. The common struggle is that, or the understanding or the public relations aspect is, how does code interact with the traditional values of a Native American community? Those traditional housing methods that some still live in, some still want. We're talking about communities with relics up to 1,000 years. Take, for example, Hopis on their mesas and lagunas in their pueblos. This is a very unique community that's trying to adopt and modernize with Western culture. Part of that is the building code. What I'm trying to do is to share that it's not something to be afraid of, because it's heartbreaking to hear from tribe after tribe after tribe that they have been given a contract or awarded a contract to a contractor to build a facility, and they are left with substandard construction. They are not taken seriously. It's kind of like throw it up and then contractor runs away. And unfortunately, that's a time and time true story that I hear to this day. So with Gila River goes back approximately 60 years with code adoption, back to the UBC. Currently, as of approximately 2 weeks ago, we adopted the 2018 code cycle. And what I'm proud of is, more so than that, is that we are fully staffed by Native American community members. So our entire staff is members of our tribe. And that makes it unique because we are, as I say, protecting our own. We're enforcing standards to those contractors who come into our boundaries to ensure that the tribe, the community, and the people get the highest quality product. Because those sites, those buildings, those homes are multi-generational in Native American communities. Grandma, grandpa, parent, aunts, uncles, grandchildren, all living under one roof because of the hardships. The economic development, a casino, a building, a gas station, that's revenue for the tribe. So we have to take those things very seriously. And unfortunately, blessed with Gila River having that long history. And we are now proud to say that we are all fully ICC certified as a building department. So with that knowledge and experience, we want to share that with our sister communities, to show them that there is a way to do things, that it is possible, and no, it won't come overnight. It's a growing process, and that growing process starts with adopting a code. And that's the message that we're trying to produce. Gila River, like has been previously mentioned, has an apprenticeship program. This started back with my supervisor. The apprenticeship program is a position open to community members. And that community member is then given the opportunity to learn on-the-job training and study code enforcement material, to then become certified, to then become a fully independent inspector in the field. I myself went through this. We currently have our newest inspector apprentice, who is approximately 25 years old, 0 construction experience. And I want to say that as a point, because we made a point to alter our job description to say 0 construction experience. We feel that the more important aspects are a willingness to learn and to empower our youth as tribal members to become proactive in their community. This individual has passed their job probation, and within that time frame has already obtained one ICC certification and is on his way to his second. The most exciting thing about the development is from having no construction experience and trying to relate things to him and explain things to him, he's now at a point where I can have a conversation with him about code. He can read blueprints. He can visualize details and point to them in the field. He understands terminology now. And we feel that's the biggest thing. Experience, on the job site experience, plays more so into the success of the Gila River Building Inspector Apprentice Program than anything. We looked at what made it successful for my predecessors, what didn't they like, what could have been improved upon, and we had to fight for this position because there is so much construction activity within Gila River right now. So our apprentice has exposure to tilt panel construction, a 11-story high-rise construction facility for hotel and casino, 140 residential homes, an industrial park for building aluminum fabrication, renovations and remodels of existing facilities at our outlet mall, as well as those unique struggles. And one of those unique struggles within Indian country is housing. Whether that's a substandard, barely holding 4 walls up trailer with no infrastructure or utilities, to what we call sandwich homes, which are roughly adobe buildings with no lights, power, running water. And another thing too is what we see as another avenue is sheds being converted to being livable spaces. And that's what we try to share our experience with other Native American communities, is that how do you enforce code? How do you enforce this Western philosophy within Native American communities retaining their identity? Because that's their biggest fear, that we will then have to displace some of our traditional housing methods, that it's going to cost too much to upgrade my traditional house or our cultural site or things of that nature. And that's where we're trying to inform and educate that this is for new construction. This is for creating a standard so that you are given a product that is good for you. What I'm mainly interested in right now is, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do the outreach that we wanted. I want to share what we're trying to do with the members on this meeting, so that you can provide, points of contact. If you have someone who's in your jurisdiction, if you know of a tribal community, please, send them our way. Get in talk with Mr. Hoffey and myself. We want to help these communities. I don't know if everyone saw the video that was published in the agenda, but one thing that I've tried to do with a video such as that, and I plan to do more in line with the apprenticeship, is create some sort of media presence about what it is that we do as building inspectors. Because if you Google, if you YouTube, you're not really going to find much. And if you do find something, it's not generally geared toward the younger demographic. It's not exciting. It's not engaging. It's a little dated at best. So if we're trying to appeal to a younger audience, if we're trying to get people interested in our field, I think that we need to look at the current social media culture and try to create a product that is engaging, exciting, dynamic, and will create interest. Oh, that's what they do. Oh, I didn't know that. And it's visually appealing, because that's really is what is exciting about what we do, is being in the field, in my opinion, and seeing things that will never be seen again. We are the ones who get to see things before it gets covered up and the public walks through a final product. at this time, I would like to open the floor to see if there's any questions which I can answer, because that's what I really want. I want that dialogue and I want that feedback, because again, COVID, we're all in our narrow boxes and we can't have those meetings and outreaches. And I feel that that's what is beneficial. How can I help you, and how, is there something you can help me with?
The floor is open for questions. Unmute and ask your questions. And Director Hampton, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. David, man, you sound like you're just doing great work out there. So when you adopt the code, do we exempt those existing Pueblo buildings from any existing structure requirements that may be required?
I would say that is an approach, but I'm hesitant to advocate that approach for an initial code adoption because it can be overwhelming. What I say is just adopt the code flat out. And then you, as the tribe who is enforcing it, when it comes to applying it on your traditional structures, can waive that and do it like on a case-by-case scenario. Because that's part of the conversation I had with Laguna with that very particular question, and it becomes all overwhelming. So I think we have to remember that some of these communities have zero construction experience, and you start getting into the legalese and the construction language, and it's way overwhelming. So no, you can, and we at one point did. We had a stipulation about traditional dwelling unit, but that's why it's important for, I think, Native American communities to have their own code enforcement officials, because we ourselves know the inherent struggles. We can make that judgment call. With our knowledge of the code, we can make a decision that's for the benefit of traditional values.
David, I've got a question that kind of touches on the last point you just made. Go ahead, Director Hampton. I'm sorry. I thought somebody else was getting ready to ask a question, David.
I'm Dan. Thank you, sir. You're doing great.
Is it tougher to make people realize the expense sometimes of bringing in a code and applying a code without being able to really look at the long range benefit that we know the code always brings? Or is it tougher sometimes, and I'm speaking because I want to think about applying this to everybody, is it tougher sometimes for you to encourage people to ignore the impact that they fear will affect their culture? And I got to admit it, if anybody has a reason to have trust issues with the slogan, the government, the code, the whatever is here to help, you're right there in it, man. How do you fight that battle? Tell us what we can do to make that better, in not just in your Native American communities, but in all these communities where people look at the government with suspicion and look at anything that we bring, and whether or not we're the government, we're still seen as regulators, thereby we're the government. How do you fight that battle, David? It's got to be tough.
I take a level of pride in that, because my angle, which I share with other Native American communities, is that I'm here for the community, not for the contractor. I tell a contractor something is substandard. I tell them that something is unsafe. I show them the code section. I show them the details, why they are wrong. And it's that ability to speak up and the ability to demand a certain level of performance from a contractor that many smaller communities didn't know they were allowed to do. So it's seeing that you can have a voice to the Western ways when if the Western ways are wronging you.
Yeah.
That's really why, because that's the hard part. The hard part is if you're from the ICC, kind of showing a young community this product, this ICC code, and you're telling them that it's gonna help you and save you, it can come off as one dimensional. But what I come from a different angle and saying, and I talked to that individual and I talked to that community member, and I was like, when's enough enough? You're telling these stories of how you were dealt this bad product as far as construction. When is enough enough? How this is a tool to empower you, to give you a voice, to demand that your contractor deliver a product. It's not to burden your people. It's not to stifle growth. It's to give you a voice. That's what it is. It's not legislation, although it is in the form of legislation. It's not a set of standards and criterias that are just out there in the ether that only certain select masters know about the language. It's an empowerment tool. It's an empowerment tool. And it just takes one step. That first step is adopting it. You're not going to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour and have a fully staffed, building safety department, because that in itself can be overwhelming too. Well, we're rural, we're isolated. How are we going to do this? And those questions start to come up, and you just got to take a breather. You just have to slow it down, and you just have to show them that this is an empowerment tool. And that's kind of the angle I approach, and I feel that really resonates with more people.
I think that's a great attitude. Actually, I hadn't thought of it specifically from that way, but the empowerment kind of gives you that ownership in your community. You already have it, but it allows you to use it. And it also allows you to make things better for you and your community. You've got experience, you've got expertise, you've got knowledge, and you have put all that together and sort of made yourself, even though not just your face, but your profile, your actions become the face of code enforcement in your community. And that sets a great precedence, and it gives people, I'm sure, a whole lot of reassurance that you're working on their behalf and for them. And I applaud you. I'm going to hush and let Ed Lisinski, your hand was up first. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Christopher McWhite's was up before mine, so I'll bow to Chris next here.
I appreciate that. You're very gracious, Ed. It's funny. Dan actually asked the same question. One of the things I wanted to do was to since the question was essentially asked, was to offer congratulations. What I see you doing is you are providing an opportunity for not only self-representation, because you cannot, and so you are actually recruiting from within people to do the code and building code compliance within the nation. I think a lot of people tend to forget that these actually are sovereign nations. It's not just a piece of land that's been deeded. So but what I was also curious, if you could kind of talk maybe just a little bit more, how you were able to communicate such complex code to people who have been working with legacy codes, UBC, I think you mentioned, for so many years, and to jump into the 2018 codes. Can you talk a little bit about which of the codes have been adopted and to the people within the nation?
So I apologize. I know you're kind of breaking up, but if the question is, what codes have Gila River has adopted, and how do we kind of convey that technical literature to someone new. So for Gila River, our first code adoption goes back to approximately 1960, with the 1967 version of the UBC. I think I printed it out because I thought it'd be cool to have a copy. Then it goes up to the 2000 IBC, to 2006, to the 2012, to the 2018. And that's kind of what I tell people too, is that I say that not to like in a bragging way. I say that as that it's a journey. It took Gila River a journey to learn and evolve and continually improve upon itself to get to the point where we have this apprenticeship, where we have community members staffing our building safety department. And like myself, coming from a military background, I had no construction experience. And that's what I think helps be able to relate to someone new, like an apprentice or a new community. I know exactly where you're coming from. I know exactly what you're talking about, or where your head might be at when you're talking about code. I remember buying my first IBC book for my test off of eBay and reading it and not knowing one definition or word in it. I had a book right here. I had Google open on this computer window. And as I would read down, I would Google words to figure out what exactly this code section was talking about. And that's why I always try to take a step back when talking with other communities, because I have to imagine that they're probably in that same position that I was. So if a team is trying to approach an organization about adopting, there are certain roles that everyone plays, and my role is to sympathize or remember what it was like to be that junior, that newbie into this field, because that's where they're at. That is where they're at. You have to understand that they probably don't know the language, they're lingual. So you have to break it down to the very most essential element. And to me, from the Native American point of view, it's empowerment. It's that has to be pushed upon the people. It's not about, oh, the sprinklers in this code cycle are going to save your insurance on this building X amount of dollars, and from that technical perspective, or the R value on your exterior walls with this code cycle is going to do this for you. To me, that conversation will come in the future. So let's not push away and dissuade people from adopting it, because it's more of a people tool. It's more of an empowerment tool. It's more about a sovereignty tool. It's more about an enforcement tool. It's and the benefits of that, the technical benefits, will come down the road. So that's how I think it benefits, is that even now we're continually growing. We're continually growing because we want to, go wireless, create, better standard operating procedures, all these things. But we have to remember what it was like when we had no computers, when we were isolated within our community from the surrounding jurisdiction, and we were all people coming with little or no construction experience. You have to remember that. And I think that's what sometimes we forget, is that, this industry is filled with a lot of veterans, seasoned construction veterans. And I know with the emerging leaders that they're trying to bring the youth and the young adults into this field. And you hear these stories about, women being pushed to the side because they didn't have the construction experience of this, 15-year carpenter, master electrician, that type of thing. But yet they don't work out as an inspector. So what is it that means more? What is it that means more in the inspector? I think is a drive. It's a drive, and it's a willingness to learn. All the tech, again, even with the code adoption, and even with the inspector's conduct, it's more than just a book. It's more than just a technical resource. It's almost like saying, it's going to sound a little corny, but like code is a way of life. Like you feel like this is something you're passionate about that can empower you as an individual to be proactive in your community. Take it down to the root, and I feel that's the success.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Ed?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And I know we're a little over on time here, but I think this is a fantastic conversation and topic. And I know you don't mind going over a little bit on this then. So, but I get two questions for you. I guess the first one, really just, I guess, who are your contractors? I guess, who do you normally see? And I guess that's just sort of my own ignorance of what happens on a reservation. But I mean, is it mostly, Native American people who are doing the work there, or do you get more outsiders coming in?
For Gila River in particular, it's pretty much all outside contractors with a typical bid process. So,
are there any challenges with that then? I guess, did you ever get the contractors kind of come in there that just say, you know what, I've worked everywhere else. I know these codes better than you guys. You guys are just adopting these. You don't know what you're talking about. Do you ever get that kind of pushback from them then on that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna use language, and by no means do I mean it to be offensive, but yeah, you have people who come to our community who think we're backwards Indians, like we're just nobodies, like we don't know what we're talking about, or that they can come out to the reservation and have free reign and just slap something together, like we're not going to call them on it. And quite honestly, that's my favorite part of the job. I get to go out there and give them a rude awakening. And again, empowerment.
That's awesome.
Empowerment.
Yep.
And that's what definitely. I preach to the younger communities. Because quick story is, I shared this on another call. There was one job site where a superintendent saw a plane flying in the sky. And he grabbed me on my shoulder and tapped on my shoulder and says, "Are you and your chief going to start shooting bows and arrows at it?" And this is like a year ago or some change, like that type of mentality exists. And Gila River is a rather large community surrounded by major jurisdictions. I can't imagine some of the things that happen to some of the more rural, more isolated communities who don't have the economic resources that we do and may have a more contentious relationship with the surrounding cities around them. It's a very real thing, and that's why I'm passionate about it, because at the root of it, again, is empowerment. I get to tell you, I get to enforce and make sure that my community gets something that we paid for. And not only that, when you leave Gila River, we're going to strive to make an impression that we are the most knowledgeable and technical and professional. That next time you come to Gila River, you realize that we set a standard.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and that's how you got to do it. I greatly, and I see Chris applauding you as well. That's fantastic. My second thought, more just a comment, but kind of want to get your thoughts on it too, is would it help you guys out if ICC, and we do have a few board of directors on here, if there was something where ICC kind of explored I guess primitive housing a little bit more, maybe throw a look at adding an appendix to the IRC or something like that deals with some of those, and not just for you guys. I'm thinking I'm up in Wisconsin here, and we have some larger Amish populations up here too. Who same thing, no running water, no electricity, and so Wisconsin, we've come up with a bunch of rules that kind of go to those types of facilities, but. I don't know, or do you prefer it just of a, here's the code and we're going to, kind of waive things as it seems appropriate to us for our location, I guess, do you have a preference on how you would rather see that handled?
In my opinion, the latter is probably best, is that it's and that's kind of why the reason why I wanted to present in this manner. I debated about it, PowerPoints and things of that nature. And I feel that's the cultural difference maybe that I want to kind of practice, but it's about talking to the communities, like especially Native American communities. It's about communication. It's about talk. It's about face to face, and trying to get too technical right off the bat, I think will hinder the code adoption process for someone new into it. On a larger scale, I know this is a conversation that ICC's had with the tiny home movement. Right. It's similar to the struggles with substandard housing, converting sheds into livable spaces. I think as far as outreach, the thing is to spread the word I remember in one of the last Las Vegas, I think it was Educode. I made a point that time. Usually I go to a training and, you just sit in the back, you hear it, you pick up a thing or two, you get your CEUs. I made a point to wear my GRIC logo t-shirt. I made a point to go out there and represent Gila River Indian Community. I made a point to go out there and be a Native American voice. And you know what? Native Americans came up to me. They were so interested in how I got there that ICC was interested in empowering Native American communities. I think I brought one individual to Mr. Sayers. He was so excited that this was possible and that, that Native Americans can have a voice because they've been stepped on. And he was sharing stories about it too. And I said, well, there's a board of directors member right there. You want to talk to him? And I made that quick introduction. I don't know if Mr. Sayers remembers, but that meant so much to him. And that goes to that people point of view that we need to get back to the normal and increase our outreach so that we can find that audience, because we still don't know who is the code official that's Native American or what their struggles are. We're still in the dark, and that's what we're all about.
No, thanks for your comments.
Mike Metcalf, you have a hand up.
Yes, I do. I was gonna just sit back and listen and not say anything, but David, you struck a kind of a kindred spirit with me in something that you said. My jurisdiction is a 70-mile long parish, and the dynamics of I guess you say household income and how people live just ranges about drastically from one end of the parish to the next, as you'll see anywhere in the country, I guess. And the northern parishes, we're parishes, of course, not counties. And the north part of the parish is kind of a continuation of Jefferson Parish, which is kind of a middle class parish with a higher income and a higher quality of living, standard of living. The north part of our parish is gated communities with upwards to $1.2 million homes that I write permits for. As you go down the parish, the way of life changes drastically, historically and otherwise. And you get into some areas where you have fishermen and farmers and cattlemen. Believe it or not, we even have a tribal community in the area out on Grand Bayou Village. And these people have a much more humble way of living. And of course, the income isn't gated community by any stretch of the means. And I just had to chime in when you said the favorite part of your job is also kind of the favorite part of my job is when I get a contractor that goes 50 or 60 miles down the road, and I have had contractors, licensed contractors that know better, that will start renovations on commercial jobs without state fire marshal approval, no permit from me, not even a phone call. I've had people begin new home starts down there without me even knowing about it. And it's all taking advantage of, these are just these folks down in the sticks. They don't have any kind of standard or I don't know what in the heck. I don't even know if a lot of people think Belchase, which is a community. We don't have any incorporated areas in our parish. We're completely unincorporated. We're both sides of the Mississippi River. And Belchase, which is the largest community in the north end with the gated communities, the more affluent area. I think a lot of contractors think that's a city. And once they get out of an incorporated area, man, they got the bull by the horns. They can go do whatever they want. They can save a ton of money and hassle on the permits department. And one of my favorite, I'm with you, brother, because one of my favorite parts of my job is going down out there and setting these folks straight. And to see what some of these guys are doing that passes as code work for a lower income person is very satisfying when you get them back on the tracks. So I really, really feel you in that regard, and I just had to chime in. So you keep at it. You're doing great, man. And so will I, at least for another 3 months anyway.
Good stuff, Mike. Good stuff. And that's one of the wonderful things that I think we'll see a common thread in here when we all do a little soul searching or a little experience checking and memories of our time here working. We all have so very much in common once we start thinking about our benefit and our value in our communities. It's an understated thing. And I want to tell you, David, that when you get out of ELMC and migrate up to BMC, your impact on our group, which I know you're dying to join on the Raise the Profile effort, is going to be substantial, because you've said things over and over again, and these guys have reinforced it, that what you are doing, you're putting a face on building safety. And it doesn't have to be your profile, your actual human face. What it is a face that shows the impact of what you do as a code professional in your community. There's no better calling, and there's no better way to mark service in a community than to make sure that people have safe places to live, work, and grow. I can't help but applaud you 100%. And yes, we're running over, and that's okay. But I just a second, if y'all will indulge me. He's talked about trust in his comments. He's talked about culture in his comments. He's talked about building opportunities to provide diversity in our profession where we can actually look like the communities we serve. He's talked about the value of tradition and bringing tradition into the changes of the code as we go through and progress in building safety. He's talked about bringing people in with no experience. That means there's a valuable lesson there. He's learned that it's easier to teach code than it is to build character and change attitudes. And that's what we all have to look for in these people that we invite into our profession, into our life. I'm telling you, and it's a sign that sits right there on my door. It says, we go out, we do not just make inspections, we make a difference. And you're a great example of it. And I think everybody here applauds you. And right now, we all just wish we were you, David, because we all serve because we love being a good servant in our communities. And you're exemplifying it. So were you. And having said that, I want to remind everybody, check out that video, A Day in the Field with the Gila River Indian Community Building Inspectors. But last, in this part of it, David, I want you to have the last word and let the rest of us hush.
This presentation really kind of rattled my brain on how to present, because I don't really know how to convey what I'm doing. PowerPoint, video, talking points. It was a struggle to figure out how to convey this message. And what I keep coming back to in my mind is just remembering why I like this profession and how much of an impact it is doing this service for my community, my Native American community. And that's what I want everyone to remember, is that just remember day one. Remember day one when we were able to find that code violation and kind of remember, like, I got it. I found it. I got it. I got it. They're correcting it, and they're going to make a better product. And it's that game, is what I kind of call it in my mind, that makes you strive to continually excel, succeed, learn, and improve yourself. And as far as outreach to Native American communities, it's about empowerment. It really is. It's really about a voice. Everything else will come. Everything else will come with time. Everything else will come with evolution. But empower your voice. Empower your position. Adopt a code.
I hear you, David. Thank you for letting us intrude on your time, and thank you for spending time with us. Stick with us the rest of the meeting. Please do.
Yes, sir.
we enjoy having you on here, and I was serious about whenever your time up with the ELMC that you're going to be joining BMC, because I'm going to bug you to death even after I'm gone if you don't. Okay. And I want everybody here, not just David, to be aware of the issues we all face when we try to bring something new that's good for our community, that we have faith and trust and we know is better, to a group that might not be as sure about it as we are. That we become that face, we become that link to having a better, safer, more productive community. It's a great big burden, but gosh, isn't it a wonderful opportunity to serve? And David, you made my day. I can't thank you enough for being here. You let us know what BMC can do for you. And when you run across things that you think are important in your learning and your growing experience, not just for you, but your community and your people that work with you, the people you're training, let us know, because that's going to become part of our raise the profile mantra. And we're going to push that stuff out so that other communities have it easier than you're having it right now. They don't have to go to ground zero to start building. They can start at 3 on a scale of 10 and build up, or 5 on a scale of 10 and build up. So what you're doing benefits all of us and all of them and all the people we serve. Again, I got no more words. I think it was fantastic, and I appreciate you being here, man. Just, yeah, you got it, Ed. That's it right there. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anything else? Anybody else want a parting thought for David?
Yes, Dan, if I may. Jim Sayers. You know, David, I just can't help but be in admiration for the things that you're getting accomplished. And here's why. The reason is that once you've worked with someone, having been around you and understand your temperament and your way of communication, the next time somebody comes back, they're going to have that much better relationship with you. And I think it's just going to build and build and build. And one thing I would want to challenge you with is other people in your communities that are in code enforcement and building safety. Really encourage them to get involved in something. Don't care what it is, if it's ELMC, if it's the BMC, if it's a local chapter, whatever it is, be that encourager. And you probably already are, and I'm just talking to the choir, but anyway, this group here of the Building Membership Council, I consider leaders, and I consider you right in there with them. So that's just wanted to get that out.
Thank you, sir. Will do.
Thanks, Director Sayers. Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. And again, David, thank you, and hang around for the rest of it. We're going to fly through it, and I know we took some extra time there, but guys, you're all going to admit it's worth it.